One is in hotel quarantine, and we have detected 2 people in the community. So Dr. Young will be giving some further details about where these people have been. My understanding is that one of these people did not have any symptoms at the time that they were out and about in the community. So we're going to urge people, if you have any symptoms, to go and get tested. It is absolutely critical because we've had 2 cases in the community. Now, this is not the strain that is currently circulating in Sydney. This is the Alpha strain, which is the UK strain, but we are still concerned. But if everyone looks very carefully at the venues that the media will put out, and if you're at any of those venues, you need to make sure that you take precautions, and Dr. Young will outline that to you. So that's very important. So we now have 40 active cases. We've had 7,301 tests in the past 24 hours, and there were over 10,000 vaccines as well that were administered yesterday as well, which is fantastic news. So we're up over that 500,000 vaccines. And once again, let's urge people out there, if you are eligible to get your vaccine, please go and get your vaccine. It is absolutely critical. We're seeing what's happening in New South Wales. So please go and get your vaccine. But also too, if you're due for your second one, it is actually very important that you go and get your second vaccine as well. Now, we're in school holidays, and I cannot be clearer, and Dr. Young cannot be clearer. We are urging Queenslanders, do not go to New South Wales. If you are holidaying at the moment in New South Wales, you should reconsider that and think about returning home. What is happening in New South Wales is very, very concerning. We haven't seen the likes of this before, because this is the highly contagious strain. We have been saying for a week now for people not to go into Sydney, but now we are saying very clearly, reconsider any travel to New South Wales, especially during this lockdown period. Now, because New South Wales, that Greater Sydney area and some of those regions are following tighter restrictions and that lockdown for the next 2 weeks, on Friday we commenced some easing of restrictions in Queensland, and we will be changing some of those restrictions from tomorrow morning, but we want to make sure that it is just for that period of the lockdown in Sydney. So I know that some of our bars and cafes and restaurants were back to that bigger, fuller capacity, but because of what's happening in New South Wales, we just want to be a bit tighter. So we'll be going back to that 1 per 2 square metre rule, and no more than 100 people in your home. So I know we had lifted that to over 100 in your home, but just for that 2-week period, we really need you to follow that advice. And finally, can I say, if people have been into those declared areas by the New South Wales government and you have returned back to Queensland, it is absolutely imperative that you follow the advice. This is the highly contagious strain, and we do not want that spreading in the Queensland community. So you owe it to yourself, to your family and to your community to do the right thing over this 2-week period. So I please ask people to do the right thing, especially if they have travelled down to New South Wales during that period. So once again, if anyone is sick, please stay at home and get tested. That's absolutely critical. And we are monitoring very closely the developments in New South Wales. And I do wish everybody in New South Wales all the best. We've been through our lockdowns here before. We've always gone very hard and very quickly. That's always been our motto. And it's worked very well for Queensland. And I know New South Wales is going to get through this just like Victoria has as well. So we're with you, and we do want to welcome you back to our state when the current situation eases. So good luck to everyone, and I'll hand over to Dr. Young to give some further details, and also to about the flight attendant who was on those Virgin flights. Now the good news there is that those flights weren't very full, the ones that were coming into Brisbane and leaving the Gold Coast. So I'll hand over to Dr. Young to go through those details, but please everyone, listen to what Dr. Young has to say about those venue sites of where the two people have been found to have a positive COVID case test. Thanks, Dr. Young.
So 3 new cases in Queensland overnight, 2 of them detected in people who were out and about in the community. They weren't in quarantine. And the 3rd one detected in an overseas traveller from overseas in hotel quarantine. So I'm not concerned about that one. Now, the other 2 cases we're still investigating. One of them is a DFO worker and was at work on that Saturday, the 19th of June, but we do not believe they contracted it while at work there. We know that they're known to friends of some of the people who attended that Portuguese restaurant. So we're just working that through. So we suspect that's where the linkage has happened. They themselves did not attend that function at that restaurant. So we're just working through what's happened there. So we suspect it will be the Alpha variant, the UK variant, but we'll need to get genome sequencing back to confirm that. So we believe, although they've had no symptoms at all, so they came forward and got tested because they'd been at the DFO, so I'm very grateful to them for doing that, and so we've got this result. They've not had any symptoms, so we are going to deem them as infectious in the community from the 20th of June. And they've been to a lot of sites throughout the community, which we'll put up on our website, several gyms, several shopping centres, etc. So that's really important. If everyone, once we've got that information up on the website, could you please go and check whether you've been at any of those sites? We'll of course be contact tracing. Then their partner, who lives in the same household, has tested positive. Now, they did develop symptoms on the 23rd, so we're deeming them infectious going back to the 21st. They've also been to a lot of venues, a lot of different sites, and they work in the Sunshine Coast. So we'll be going through all of that with both of them, and we'll get all that information on the website. So it is critical, as people have done before, to just check those websites, come forward, get tested. Any symptoms at any time get tested, but we'll also be contacting people that even if they don't have symptoms, we'll want to test them. Then we also have been informed by New South Wales that they have a positive case in a Virgin cabin crew member who was on 5 flights while infectious. On Friday they were on a flight, and on Saturday on a flight, and they came into Brisbane and Gold Coast, so we'll be contact tracing everyone on those flights. They're all close contacts and will be going into quarantine for 14 days. Fortunately, the flights were fairly empty because of all of the restrictions with Sydney. Then there will also have been Queenslanders who've been on the other flights. There were 5 flights in total, Queenslanders on the other flights, flying down to Melbourne and to Sydney. So we'll be making sure that those people are contacted. If they're back in Queensland, they'll be in quarantine as well for the 14 days. Then we have another case that the Northern Territory informed us about. So this is a fly-in, fly-out worker who works in the mines, one of the mines around 350 kilometres or so from Alice Springs, and he flew in from Victoria into Brisbane, stayed 9 hours overnight, then flew on to the Northern Territory. And he was on that floor 5 of the Novotel hotel at the Brisbane airport that we had that other transmission event. So because he'd been on that floor, he was asked to get tested, which he did, and that came back positive. So I've asked, and it's happening as we speak, that every single person on that floor 5 of that hotel has now been moved to different floors. So we did extend quarantine for people who were still on that floor, and we went and contact traced everyone who'd left that floor for an extended period. I don't think this was the same transmission event that caused the other infection there. I think it was a different one on that floor, but we went very widely in our contact tracing for people who had been on that floor. Now, anyone who works in that mine, there are about 700 or so people, I'm told, by the Northern Territory that have been made close contacts. If any of those people are in Queensland, we're currently contacting them. We've already got hold of several and testing them, and they've gone into quarantine. So there is a lot happening here, but the straightforward message is, please, if you are sick, it is absolutely critical that you immediately come forward, get tested and isolate till you get a negative result for COVID. That is just critical. Now, we know that people can spread this when they don't have symptoms, and that's our job then to contact trace and find those people. So if you've been to certain venues, we ask you to get tested, even if you haven't had any symptoms. Then the second absolutely essential thing I ask every single Queenslander, when you become eligible for the vaccine, please immediately go online to book it at one of our clinics if it's Pfizer, or go to your GP or to one of the pharmacies or one of the Commonwealth vaccine clinics and get vaccinated. So anyone who is 60 years of age or over should go and get the AstraZeneca from their GP or from a Commonwealth vaccine clinic or a pharmacy if there's one of those in your area. The pharmacies are only in the remote part of the state. They're not throughout the state yet at this stage. That is critical. And then you must get the second dose. And your second dose needs to be the same as the first dose, Pfizer or AstraZeneca, to get the full protection. The good thing that New South Wales is seeing, and their Chief Health Officer shared with me, is that there has been virtually 100% transmission of the Delta variant in households. If people live in a household of a confirmed case, they have been getting infected unless they're vaccinated. And the same with that party that we've all been talking about for several days now, where there are around 30 to 40 people attended a 30th birthday party. Everyone's got infected unless they were vaccinated. So vaccine is what we all need to do. That's critical. Thank you. Oh, a few other things. So as of 10 a.m. today, so Queensland has put in place as orders that to follow the New South Wales direction for stay at home. So anyone in Queensland today, as of 10 a.m. this morning, can only leave for the 4 reasons if they were in any of those 35 LGAs in metropolitan Sydney, in Central Coast, Blue Mountains, Wollongong or Shell Harbour. If they were in any of those, they need to stay at home unless they need to buy any essential goods, food, etc. Of course, they can leave for that, but they must wear a mask unless they need healthcare, or they're booked to have a vaccination, but they must wear a mask. And of course, if they're sick, stay home. Don't leave, as occurs for everyone. Then they can leave for essential work if that work can't be done by someone else. So otherwise, they should be staying home. All of our kids, of course, are on school holidays, so education doesn't apply. So, plus, of course, if there is no one else who can provide care to a vulnerable person, then they can continue to provide care, but they need to be very careful, and I would hope that that vulnerable person is vaccinated. So, because no one, of course, wants to give COVID to a relative or someone they're caring for. So please, anyone from those 35 LGAs as of 10 a.m. this morning can only leave home for the next fortnight or for 14 days from when you left that LGA, so it might be less than the fortnight. Please stay home. And anyone who's been in those original 4 LGAs of Woollahra, Randwick, Waverley or the City of Sydney can't leave home for 14 days if they've been there since the 11th of June. And I apologise, this is all very confusing. So I go back to that first statement, just if you're sick, stay home, get tested till you get that, and isolate till you get that result.
Dr. Young, you just said there's a lot of things happening right now. How concerned are you, and are you considering, or
Right, so thank you for reminding me. So as you heard from the Premier, at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, we're winding back some of those restrictions to align with the 2-week period that New South Wales has put restrictions in place for their entire state. We're not winding them back as far as New South Wales has because we don't have those outbreaks here. If we were to get outbreaks, of course, we would, as we've always done, consider what we need to keep people safe. So as of 6 a.m. tomorrow, we're going back to the 1 per 2 square metre density requirement, maximum of 100 people in your home, but we're leaving the self-catering, the smorgasbords, buffets and so forth, we're leaving them in place at the moment. But we will just have to see how all of this evolves over the next few days. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Well, because he flew up from Victoria, which we had restrictions on, so he went into quarantine for 9 hours before his flight could be organised to go to the Northern Territory. Yes, yes. Oh yes, we do that regularly. So we do that with flight crew who fly into Brisbane and then turn around and fly out the next day. So we'll have them in quarantine. We do it with maritime workers. So yes, we've been doing that for a long time now. That depends what happens in New South Wales going forward. But yes, of course, it's a possibility. It's always been a possibility right from the start of this pandemic, which is why the Premier said it is critical that Queenslanders really, if they're in New South Wales, anywhere in New South Wales today, they think very carefully about what their plan is going forward, because they might be facing